Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show.
He said he gon' huff and puff and blow my mind up. You meet the island girl, she might Jxxiii wind up.
Welcome to the Deepak Saini Show. I'd like to thank Jxxiii for the intro music. You can find a link to her music in the show description. I got a special treat today. I got a 2-for-1 today. My guests today are Gail and Gregory Hoag. Upon meeting over 38 years ago, they recognized their calling to discover and utilize universal principles of resonance embedded in sacred geometry to evolve consciousness. Combining the wisdom of art and science, they harness the multidimensional qualities of energy. They create technologies and share knowledge for improving health, raising consciousness, reducing stress, manifesting purpose, and clearing electromagnetic interference. Gregory's a scientist and leading expert on sacred geometry, and along with Gail, an artist, business, and health consultant, they founded Metaforms in 1985. Recognized as leading experts on sacred geometric technologies, the Hoags are gifted intuitives and spiritual stewards living on their high energy land in Colorado and energetic chambers and geometric grids to positively affect humanity and the world. Gail and Gregory, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deepak.
Very, very
Great
interesting
to be
topic
here.
for sure. And we had a conversation prior, and certainly something I'm interested in, topic I've not had anyone, even remotely closely on the podcast thus far. So really looking to get into it. And what I like to always start my podcast with is, maybe just at a high level and go as deep as you want to, but when people go to school or whatever, be a doctor, be a fireman, be an astronaut, teacher, whatever, right? But how does one fall into this field? How did you guys get into doing what you're doing now?
That's a great question. It's an interesting thing that a lot of people can start out thinking that they're going into a particular profession, a particular direction, and life brings us different opportunities. I actually was in the field of the arts when I went to school. And because of certain life experiences and things that I became very interested in, consciousness really started rising to the top of that. How to affect consciousness. And in all honesty, I think, Deepak, that the more that I got in touch with who I am and what my soul purpose is, I realized that it was about finding ways to make a difference with the consciousness on this planet that then, has a huge impact on the whole evolution of not only this physical planet, but all people and life on. So, I had certain experiences that triggered me, spiritual connections. And with that, pretty much followed my guidance, followed my train. I've always been a very highly intuitive person and following what seems to be attractive to me. And one of those things was actually when I was in my early 20s, I think it maybe late teens, early 20s, I was very interested in the work of Buckminster Fuller.
Mm-hmm.
He's the one with, who created the geodesic dome. And that started to instruct me about geometry. And even though I was not what I would consider a math whiz, in school, I loved geometry. It just spoke to me. And when I was reading Bucky Fuller, it just took me on a whole nother journey that, kept engaging my interest. And as things happened, I met Gregory when I was, just before I turned 35. We met in Boulder, Colorado, and he was carrying around this box of these beautiful geometries that he had created. They were just lovely. And I put my hand over it and I went, oh my gosh, I feel energy with this. What's going on? And so, that kind of started the journey for me. So I'll let Gregory tell you about.
Greg, before you go, I just want to underline something Gail said. And I'm not going to share my story here. The audience I think mostly knows, but I went through my journey as well. Mine was a health journey, and then I think just to your point, Gail, is like sometimes you can call it the universe, spirit, whatever. Maybe it's our gut feeling, our heart guides us in a different path, and it certainly changed my path going through my journey, and more of an awakening awareness, if you will. And again, to now my mission to serve as many people in the health realm, etc. So I really love that part of your story. So just want to really underline that for the audience. And Gregory, let's hear your story now.
That's the wonderful thing, is we all have really incredible stories in the way life pulls us along. And for me, after studying so much science and getting into that in college, when I graduated, I started falling into different Eastern meditation masters. I mean, I started getting interested in that. At first, I argued against it, and then I decided to try it a little more. And after about 10 years of doing different businesses and meditation on the side, I even joined ashrams in a few cases, which was hard for them because they said you had to give up everything. But I owned all these businesses and I employed most of the people in the ashrams. So that was a challenge. But what happened was I built a pyramid with a friend, and this was in the late 70s. And at that time, it cost over $50,000. That means in today's dollars, it's close to $250,000. And we took turns sleeping in it. And it set off something.
How big was this pyramid? Sorry, to interject.
Okay, no, jump in anytime. It was only about 10 feet high, but it was precisely engineered by some engineers that we'd hired. It had large tubes that were stainless steel filled with crushed quartz. It had crystal balls 2 feet in diameter that took a year to cut in Germany.
So 10 feet high would it be fair, just for the audience who's listening and or watching, would it be like the size of a small room, something like that, as far as like the square footage?
It pretty much would take up a small room.
Okay, awesome.
Continue. And the point is that it set off an energy flow within me called Kundalini. And you're familiar with that. It's basically an Eastern term, which means energy rising up from the earth.
Yeah, I think most of the audience who would have heard it probably would be, if they've heard it, probably more familiar with Kundalini yoga. That's what I think most people tend to, but again, I guess it'd be energy yoga.
Yeah, but this is the extreme example of what happens when energy starts running through your body. And it ran through my body so intensely that I had holes being burned in both hands and both feet, just from the energy coming through so intensely. And so it was something that was serious for a couple of years. It was the kind of thing that I wasn't sure if I was going to survive or not. However, I started connecting to higher energies, higher beings of consciousness.
Sorry, Greg, when you said you weren't sure if you were going to be able to survive, do you mean from the burns? Is that what you mean? The burns?
No, I meant that Kundalini moves so much energy through your body when it's really flowing. It feels like a cold fire. I mean, there'd be times even
I see what you mean.
20 or 30 years later where I'd be lying on the floor having so much energy go through my body that I thought I was going to die. I didn't think I could hold it. You see, what it starts doing is it started shifting my field. It started shifting my awareness into higher connections. And I started building geometries that I was seeing, that I was, after a while, being directed to build. And that's what happened with Gail. When we got together, we recognized that we had a mission to do together. And we play off each other whenever we design something to discover if this is going to be of the highest good, how it's going to serve people. And we've been doing this now for 38 years together.
And how long have you guys been married?
So 38 years.
Okay, awesome. Love it. Love it. You're
So-
not quite double me and my wife.
Yeah, it was like we recognized we had work to do together, and that happened before we realized that getting married was going to solidify that union, in a way, make it stronger. I mean, we both recognized that to synthesize that higher understanding in our synergy, in our interaction, it's what's drawn us through and kept us together, along with a lot of other love and experiences over the last 38 years. But the geometries that have come out of this is what we're speaking to now, because you see, the universe is based on patterns and rhythms and cycles. And if we look at the way even the sun and the moon and the earth are created around very specific diameters and very specific energies, that we can draw into a form that resonates with that same energy. And because there's so much that's been going on in our world today that's separating us from those higher connections, separating us, as you may have found, some of the ideas of health, you had to come back to those original connections within you to
Absolutely,
trust, to trust that source, that guidance, that love that you are. The body knows so much innately if you give it the space to
absolutely.
be.
I 100% agree with that, Gregory, for sure. And it's something I certainly talk about and other guests have as well. Our bodies know how to heal, and our bodies intuitively know. It's just our logical brain or other influences that kind of block out our own listening to ourselves. I want to ask this question. I think it's a perfect time to ask this question. Gail kind of mentioned it in the context of like math, right? Geometry. And, you and both of you talking about, the geometry. And so let's define it for the audience. Like, what do you guys mean? What is sacred geometry for those who don't know, and maybe define that in your guys' terms?
Well, I'm going to start out real simplistically to give people kind of a context. Everything is energy. I think we all can agree on that energy is something that before we actually have concrete form, there's just pure energy. And when it gets down to, if you want to bring us down to just being, working with anything at the cellular structure, it's energy. And a lot of that energy, when we look at it, is space. It's nothingness. It's not this physical form that we spend the vast majority of our time relating to in our lives. So then the question that I think a lot of people tend to ponder when they're, more reflective is, well, who am I? What is this? How did the universe get to be the way that it is? And that's one of the beautiful things with sacred geometry, is that it really helps us have an understanding of how the universe has come about, how it's structured. Why do plants grow in a particular way? Why are there certain rhythms and patterns and sequences, cycles, vibrations that are so important? And we see them over and over and over again. So there's certain universal patterns to all of this. And sacred geometry is really what defines that. And it was certainly known by ancients. A lot of, when you go back into ancient cultures and you see these extraordinary structures ways that they built, things that they left that we now can, can see. And they give us clues for their understanding of not only how the physical life has been created, how it relates to the spiritual life, the everything beyond. And, we are multi-dimensional beings. And what I mean by that is that, like I was just explaining, we're not just physical. We're a soul and a body. And we have relationships to all of these different dimensions that we don't learn about in school. But we start to realize as we grow, as we become more conscious, more aware, we start to be aware, to have an awareness of the things that are outside of this physical realm of our senses of smell and touch and hearing and vision. There's so much more. We have feelings, we have intuition, we have a way of connecting to that essence of who we are. And
Absolutely.
so
We're not just meat suits, right? We're not just meat suits.
Exactly. So that's kind of like, like I like to kind of give people a context. And then Gregory likes to go more into.
Before we go to Gregory,
specifics.
I was going to ask this question later because I thought, and you kind of opened the door for me when you started talking about plants. So let me ask this question. Hopefully it makes sense. So, there's some portion, we have a very diverse audience, and there's certainly a portion of the audience that are, kind of financial services or at least, play in that realm, or they privately invest and that sort of thing. And not everyone's a trader, but, there's, a trading technique called, using Fibonacci lines. And Fibonacci lines also come across in nature as well. Is there a relationship? And, again, I'm asking the question because I don't know, but when you talk about sacred geometry in plants or in nature, is that similar to Fibonacci lines in nature? Would that be fair? Are they same? Are they related? I don't know that answer.
Yes, essentially what you're talking about with the Fibonacci series is, 1, and then you add that, the next number 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8. So when you get into larger and larger numbers and you divide the larger number by the small number, you're going to have 1.6180339. It just keeps going. It never ends. And so the Fibonacci numbers approach that. And when you come into the physical dimension, I was looking around for a 5 calibers here. I could show you that the body is constructed on these same ratios. So my finger, the tip of it to the whole finger is in that Fibonacci relationship.
Pi ratio.
Yeah, well, it's the phi ratio. So the Fibonacci numbers gives us the phi ratio.
Right. And sorry to interrupt, Gregory, but just again, I want to bring it back to the audience. So probably a lot of people have heard this, from, and not everyone's different, of course, we're not all exactly the same, but, there's that sort of that, would it be some of that ratio of like, our eyes distance to our nose and, our arm length, finger to fingertip, if we have our arms out, for those who are not watching on video, I have my arms out far, it's supposed to be as match our height and, things like that. Of course, we're all unique and different, but is that kind of playing around the same thing with this mathematical?
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely, with the phi ratio. And from the head to the navel to the feet. But if I had this caliber up here with me, I could show you that the hand to my elbow, it fits almost exactly for more of us than we would like to imagine. Mm-hmm. And we considered it the golden ratio in the time of the Greeks, and they used it in a lot of their buildings because they considered it beautiful. And one of the reasons they considered it beautiful was because it is what is. We recognize what is and we're attracted to it. And that's the nature of phi. And so the human being is constructed around that. Plants are, all animals, insects. Even if you were to take the moon and put it next to the earth, such that you measure the center of the moon to the center of the earth, and then you'd have the radius of the earth, you'd have a diagonal line coming from the moon to the edge of the earth. And when you divide that line by the radius of the earth, you get 1.618, you get phi. So
Right.
the earth and the moon are set up to generate that particular frequency energy. And if you take the add those together, you get a number that has the same number of degrees as this geometry right here. So this geometry has the same number of degrees as there are miles in the diameter of the moon, the diameter of the earth. So you see, that's creating a resonance. The earth and the moon are doing a dance together that's creating a resonance that is very similar to the harmonic of the Fibonacci series,
Got
of
it.
phi, of the way we're created, of life. That's the way the nature of DNA is constructed, around these same principles.
Yeah.
So you see, when earlier we were talking about the body knows what's right, but what's blocking it? Often it's the environment that's blocking it. I mean,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
when
We're going to talk
you
about that
have,
more for sure. Greg, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Go ahead.
I don't be that guy who interrupts, but I don't want to get too far off from the audience here. I want to go back to something you said. You know, for anyone who might be listening or watching this and is like, oh, this sounds a little bit, you know, kind of out there, a little bit woo. You know, I want to make 2 points clear right now. So Gregory mentioned the golden ratio a moment ago. You know, if anyone's done any little bit of reading on these kind of topics, you will have come across this. And, you know, scientific studies have shown that when people, and again, we're all a little bit different, but when people, their faces have the perfect ratio and they match the golden ratio, and then they show these people in studies different faces that match that golden ratio exactly always get ranked higher as being more attractive. So we've scientifically proven that. And then as far as again for the audience, I think we all understand tides, right? We should, I think, right? So, you know, there is a relationship between the Earth, the Moon, our entire universe. Certainly, it affects in tides, cycles, of course, and again, it's energy. It's all just energy is the whole universe. So I just want to underline that for the audience before we move on. So please, Gregory, please continue.
and what I was saying, you know, with the moon and the earth, I mean, those are exact measurements. I mean, the earth, 7,920 miles is the diameter I'm working with. And if you were to actually measure it, it's a little thicker around the middle than the polar measure, which is necessary because you don't want the earth to wobble as much. And so when it's thicker around the middle, but if you were to squish it all into a smooth ball, it would be exactly 7,920 miles, which is the ideal. You see, there are archetypes that the universe creates through. And when we follow those archetypes, when we build geometries that mimic that energy, that mimic that harmonic, it brings that energy into our environment. And that makes it easier for us to connect to what's real. It's like living your life inside the city, inside a room with a lot of computers, constantly going, eating, you know, fast food or whatever. And then you take a moment to go into the country and feel a brook running in front of you and the sun shining down and the leaves of the trees, and then just eating some fruits and vegetables that come from those trees, perhaps. You know, it's the difference in the way your body feels when it's in nature, when it's in a space that feels natural and right. That's the difference of being around some of these geometries or not, because we've cut so much out of our life that we're missing essential vibrations that are necessary for our ability to think clearly, our ability to feel comfortable, not be driven by negative emotions, to feel connected to everything and each other. I mean, that's part of what happens with the geometries that we're talking about. And those types of geometry are what I am referring to as sacred geometry. It's a geometry that has the ability to vibrate, resonate, like a C tuning fork will resonate with a C tone. These geometries vibrate with a larger harmonic that is responsible for creating everything in our universe.
So you mentioned archetypes just a few moments ago. Can you maybe just expand on what do you mean, or what, or maybe describe a couple of those, or I don't know how many there are, but I think that'd be interesting to delve into.
Well, okay. An archetype is a universal pattern that arises from, I feel everything is consciousness. That's the highest form of being is pure consciousness, and it's infinite on that level of understanding that I'm speaking to. And so there are patterns like the phi ratio. And what we spoke about earlier was that the moon and the earth reflect that phi ratio. The human being reflects that phi ratio. Animals do, insects do, plants do. So this is a pattern. This is a harmonic that exists on levels before creation. And so it's the way everything was created around following that particular harmonic, that particular resonance. And that's an archetype. And so there are other archetypes that work with other mathematical principles, such as light. Light has a geometry to it that has an effect on its speed, that has an effect on the way cells communicate through light, and they communicate through certain geometries, and that is an archetype. And you'll see numbers come up again and again, where the numbers of, say, a photon reflect the numbers of the sun that created that photon, that relate to the speed of that photon, that relate to the fact that if we were to take one of our cells and put it in a room that's totally sealed off from everything in terms of other frequencies and light, and we had the equipment to detect it, we would see our cells start to produce photons, start to produce light, literally, because everything springs from light. And all the platonic solids, all the geometries that create this reality follow those rhythms and patterns of the way light sets, the field for them. It kind of builds the pathway, and that's an archetype. It's always energetic in nature, and it always precedes creation itself. It's arising from the depths of consciousness.
Gregory, let me ask you this question. I talk about this to my clients about, and maybe we'll get to this a little bit later, about EMFs, and certainly the Schumann resonance, the frequency of the earth, 7.8 hertz. Would that be considered an archetype as well? Or similar but different?
Like the Schumann resonance?
Yeah, yeah. I guess for those who don't know, like the electromagnetic, the native electromagnetic field of the Earth, would that be considered
No,
an archetype? No. Okay.
I mean, you just redefined it by saying native. I'm talking about a universal field. However, the
Sure.
Earth, the Schumann resonance happens because the Earth has a particular size. It has a particular depth of atmosphere. And so you're talking about a frequency that's bouncing from the Earth to the higher aspects of our ionosphere and back down. And so that's the measure of what they consider the Schumann resonance. And there are many harmonics to it. But then the question is, what's the effect on life if we shift that resonance, or if we include that as one of the frequencies? How do we generate that frequency when we include it? Sometimes we can do it electronically, certain frequencies. We do that with music and sound. But you
Absolutely.
see, sound is totally, we're at we're at choice with sound. We can make it anything we want. We can do om, and then you can do it like a Tibetan monk chanting om. I mean, there are many ways, but the amazing thing is, you may have heard that there are certain frequencies that we can work with a concert pitch of middle A to set it to 432, and that will be a frequency that will be a more positive effect, because that particular frequency, 432, relates to the way light is generated and the way a photon reacts. And so we can follow some of these archetypes in what we're doing in our lives in order to enhance the field that we're existing in, because people that are working with to pitch of A, it is a music that connected. And so these are some of the things that we can do in our lives to shift our health and our well-being by following those archetypes. And that's what we've been doing with the pendants that we're wearing. We found a way to take those frequencies, those different geometries, and shrink
Gregory,
them.
I want to talk about the pendants and some of the products you guys have, but I just want to come back to something you said earlier. We've said it a number of times. Both of you said a number of times, just that you kind of use the term consciousness. So I'd like to, before we get to the pendants and some other really cool stuff you guys are doing, maybe we could just, like, what do you define maybe consciousness, and how maybe being more, it's going to sound silly, it's just like a silly question, how people could be more conscious of their consciousness and how that can affect their lives.
Well, one is, the lowest level is awareness, but what we mean by consciousness is much more than that.
Consciousness is so big. And the way that we see it, we start out with consciousness. If you go into, particularly in Eastern religions, we talk about oneness, and what is that oneness? And in many religions, they speak to the essence of God, which is pretty much unexplainable when it really comes down to it. And yet consciousness is something that, if you were to look at all the things that we're talking about, with all the different patterns and all the rhythms and the cycles, and the way we have, 13 moon cycles a year, and everything operates in very specific ways. However, without consciousness, what is it? It's just some kind of an automatic rhythm. And consciousness is really what gives everything fullness and color and unity, and brings us into that. In some ways, it's struggling to find who we are in relationship to everything that's out here, who I am in relationship to you. who I am in relationship to this planet. Our consciousness wants to understand that. And the earth as a conscious being, a lot of people have that understanding now that the earth isn't just some mechanical product. It is conscious. And the trees and the plants and the animals and everything that's here on this planet has an element of consciousness. And that consciousness is what brings us all together. And what I believe is that absolute essence of that consciousness is something that we call, and that love is what gives birth to everything. It's what holds it together. Bucky Fuller used to talk about it as it's like the metaphysical gravity. It's what holds everything together and gives life to it all. So really, without consciousness, life is empty. And I think so many people struggle, particularly during this time that we're living in, and our interactions where there's so many people who feel very separate. And consciousness is to see our unity, to see our connections, to see what really brings us together and fleshes all of this out so that there's real meaning and purpose to what this life is. So this is pretty esoteric, but consciousness is such a big word and it embraces so much. I believe that it's important not to separate it out from all these other things, because that is what enables consciousness to kind of be the container for all of that.
Absolutely. And I'm loving this conversation. Again, having guests like you on, scratching my own itch, so to speak, and trying to, understand these type of things and having great conversations. But if I just want to, for the audience is like, I think we need to ask ourselves bigger questions sometimes. And even if we don't fully understand, just letting those type of questions and ponder those type of, information that we might not be 100% familiar with is, how it enables us to grow. And when we grow, I think we can, get along better with people, and hence, and we have, more fulfilling relationships and honestly best be less mean to each other. So
exactly,
for sure. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And it's an interesting thing, because I think one of the things that we see so much in our environment and in the interactions with people is that too much is fear driven. And when we're in fear,
especially the last 4 years, right?
yeah, really. And when we're in fear, that separates us. It separates us from each other. It separates us from our environment, our community. It separates us from our spiritual connections. And we are in the flow of love. And love, that higher consciousness, is really what gives us health, gives us wealth and prosperity, gives us happiness. And all of those things are so essential. So having these kinds of conversations and taking the time to come into a place where we embrace who we are at a higher level, I believe that that is why I'm so attracted to doing what I'm doing, because it brings us to answers of how we can move forward, how we can live together, how we can bring love back into this whole union and be the deterrent to the separation and the fear that has gotten such a stranglehold on so many of our relationships and our communities.
Absolutely, Gail. I love that. And, nothing wrong with organized religion. Obviously it has its place, and some people are looking for religion. Some people have been pushed away by religion. But I think you said a good point there about spirituality, because you don't have to necessarily be religious, in my view, or belong to an organized religion to be spiritual. And I think that's a different level altogether. And that's certainly something, myself personally, I've grown over in certainly the last 4 years, and we've all know what's been going on the last 4 years, but even prior to that. And I don't my parents come from two different religions, so I got a mixture of everything growing up. But certainly growing my own spirituality and what I believe I think has helped me elevate my thought process and how I relate to others in a, not only my family and my community, but in a global sense. So again, I'll just, for the audience, I just underline it as like, you know, spirituality doesn't necessarily mean religion. I think we all need more spirituality. So, and Greg, I want to get back to some of the products. I kind of cut you off there. Where I wanted to, you know, circle back on something, but you were starting to talk about the pendants. And then for those who are watching on video, you know, you have some geometry floating there in the air, and then also you have one on a table there that you picked up earlier. So maybe you can describe some of that for us, what you guys are doing there.
Okay. You know, what we were talking about with all of this in terms of like fear separating us, all of these things going on that are creating division, separation, and fear. And what we're working with are geometries that create a field that comes from a place where you start feeling connected. You start feeling connected to who you are, and that you see, self is so inclusive of everything that's where we began to be able to love and accept everything in the world. And doing the pendants is we found a way to a lot of these geometries, like the ones next to me. I found a way to put them into two-dimensional antenna systems where they can fit inside something that you can wear. And then when you start feeling that energy, it starts shifting the way you interact with the world. And I love it when things happen with children and animals, because you can't say, hey, that's placebo effect. You know, it's just because, you know, you're wearing something different that they are acting differently, but they don't care. But animals are so attracted to people when they are in this field of energy. Are too. It's like I had a grandmother say, what I love about the pendant is that my grandkids used to run away from me when I came. Now, wearing the pendant, they crawl all over me. And really, difference of attraction to energy. People are attracted and they don't realize what they're attracted to. They'll say, oh, it's beautiful, I love that. But it's an energy that's starting to connect parts, connect people to higher. So intuition increases, you know, feeling of being in the right place at the right time. We've done a lot of studies where we even just measure what's going on with the body in terms of internal organs being overactive or underactive. And what happens is, with a pendant on, everything starts to come into balance. Or maybe you haven't been drinking or eating properly for a while, and there could be certain extremes on internal organs, but they start to balance out with these energies. They start to come into a center. The heart starts creating more of a central rhythm. And so amazing things start happening. I had one couple that was an older couple come back after a couple of weeks, and the husband, he must have been in his early 80s, late 70s. He leaned over and he said, what I love about this pendant is my wife doesn't yell at me as much anymore. And she overheard us.
You got to wear my pendant a lot more, I guess.
And she said, I don't have to. And so you see, but they're both affected in different ways. We all get affected by being connected in a totally different way from each other, in the unique way that we're being human beings together.
You guys have
You
more
know-
than just the pendants, because I think we
Oh,
had a
yeah.
conversation prior. Like I've have, not from your company, but I have well, I don't wear it on my neck. I can put it in my pocket. It's kind of like a keychain type of thing. And I also have pyramids or conical pyramids that I have various places in my house. Do you guys have other products
Right.
besides pendants as well?
We do. Yeah, we do. We have something that you can put in your pocket that we call the Eye Connect, which has similar technology to the pendant that Gregory is discussing. Trees that we see here, these are only a few of what we make. We have a whole catalog of different geometries, and when they spin, their field becomes stronger. So we have special motors that spin them at a particular resonance that put out that energy. So it really is about providing a feeling, an energy, a vibration, a resonance in your home, in your office, in a healing environment, whatever it is, that helps people feel more in the flow, more balanced, more connected. And you were talking about earlier that you have a number of people who do day trading. And, I know those people, they know what it feels like when they're in the flow, and they can't always pinpoint it. It's like, oh, how did I get there? And what is it like? And all that. Well, what we do is actually providing kinds of tools that help people remain in the flow, get into the flow. And that's when things like serendipity happens. Well, serendipity, when you are talking about somebody and then 10 minutes later they call you, that's serendipity. Or you're thinking about something that you want to find the answer to something, or you want a particular product or something that, seems like it would be helpful. And then miraculously, it seems like it just kind of like comes into your awareness so that you can then make a decision on whether you want to get it or not. Serendipity is a natural thing. It's being in the flow. And when we talked about archetypes before, that's part of this whole thing, is that when we're connected, then there is this flow. There are relationships that exist, as we spoke about, that we can gain entrance into. And when that happens, things work together, relationships work better. I love it that when, we have so many people, we've been doing this for so long that we have tens of thousands of people that have worked with our products all over the years, and all over the world rather. And we get people that will email us and just tell us how their life has shifted, how their relationships have shifted, how their work has shifted, that things that seemed really stuck aren't stuck anymore. And so, that's part of this, why we love doing what we're doing, because it's a way of supporting people in real practical ways. And at the core of it, as we were talking about before, is that enhancing this whole relationship to consciousness. And the more conscious that we are, the better life works, the more we can contribute more fully. We can do it in a way that's, that really shares a loving spirit and brings us together.
Absolutely. I love that. And a lot of the things you just shared, that your, past clientele are coming back with you, that they've seen the benefits of, or, I get very similar things. Of course, I have a different, methodology. So let me ask this question, how does the technology, or just, even understanding kind of the overall scope of the topic we've been talking about today, kind of lead to, again, this is not a health podcast, but this is, what I do in my own coaching. How does the technology and understanding these concepts sort of lead to improved health and even prosperity, for that matter?
Well, that's what I was speaking to a bit ago when I talked about the fact that we can measure internal organs of the body when someone has one of these pendants on, and it brings things into a balance. It's like we are running on so much adrenaline in our lives being, I was going to say improperly nourished. And what we're feeding ourselves with is worry, and worry about what's tomorrow, worry about what happened yesterday, and stress creates a great number of the diseases that we have. I mean, it's the catalyst for them. So
Absolutely,
when
100% agree with that.
you reduce stress, and when you start to just create a balance in your life internally that's feeling right, that's feeling good, where you're feeling happy, where you're feeling connected, and connection is becoming, I think, more and more important in topics that people are writing about now, because of the disconnection that's happening with, being on cell phones or working with technologies that don't allow us to communicate as human beings. At the depth of it is not just connecting with another human being, but it's connecting to yourself. And so the deeper we can go into our own beingness and feel that connection and feel that love internally, feel the way we relate to the highest aspect of what we consider to be in existence, whether that's consciousness, source, God. I mean, these are all different ways of describing that high aspect of beingness within us. If we connect to that, that's where all health comes from. That's where all understanding comes from. And the problems today, a lot of it is because we've disconnected from that, blocked the flow of energy from source. We've blocked the flow of energy from our own soul. We can't hear on a higher level what it is that's the right thing to do. We're looking for help out here, and the politicians go this way and that way. They seem to be catering to just what's going to get them a vote rather than what's going to serve people. How do we shift things so that we're in service to all, in service to each other? Because we are all connected. If we don't work together, the world is going to suffer at a level where we may not survive because of I'm right and you're wrong, and I'm going to fight you until we're both dead.
Yeah, absolutely, Gregory. I love that answer you have. Now we're running up here on time here, so and you guys do have a gift that I want to share with the audience. But and again, this is not a health podcast, but I do like to ask my guests sort of this last question. So outside of your pendants and your own technologies you've developed, you kind of alluded to it earlier, but I'd love for each of you to kind of briefly maybe describe for yourself what does like your health routine or your morning routine, like what does that kind of look like for you on a daily basis?
Well, to start with, we meditate in the morning.
Love that.
And you know what? We actually have certain geometries that we meditate underneath of that are wonderful. It sets the pattern for the day as far as I'm concerned. And it doesn't have to be very long. I mean, oftentimes it's not a whole lot more than like 15 or 20 minutes, but it's like infusing me with that energy and that connection. Another thing that I think is really important for us is we really value healthy choices in our diet. We have a garden where we grow wonderful organic vegetables. We do things that physically support us. I go to and I dance 3 days a week.
Oh, I love
and
that.
we take
What
walks.
kind of dance? What kind of dance?
It's called Nia, and it's
Oh,
sort of a
Nia.
wonderful combination of martial arts, yoga, dance, and beautiful music. And it's like a wonderful mind-body.
I'm going to check that out. I've never heard that before.
Yeah, NIA. It's wonderful. So those kinds really work. They work for me. And another thing that I think is really important, and that's gratitude. So throughout the
Love that
day,
as well.
before,
Yeah.
in the morning, in the evening, I always express gratitude. And, I'm thankful for the day. I'm thankful for waking up in the morning. I'm thankful as I'm going to sleep. And, those are just pieces, just little pieces of things that I do.
Okay. Greg,
And,
anything different?
I'm drinking hot water and lime juice. I mean, it's like I don't drink anything else until I've had hot water and citrus or something, lime or lemon. And of course, I work with Pilates. I think exercise is so important. And where we live, we run our business. We have a shop downtown, but we live on land. The only thing we can hear is nature around us. We have a river running, lots of birds, lots of frogs, lots of animals that come and visit. And I think that connection to source, to spirit, is such an important part of health. And doing it through the forms and our pendants and living in an environment that supports it makes a lot of difference.
I love it. I love it. And there's probably like half a dozen other topics and questions I wanted to ask you guys about, but we're running out of time or so. Maybe at some point we'll have to do a round 2 and get into some of these other topics. But you guys did have a gift for the listeners. So this gift offers 2 free meditations, and then also a special offer to purchase. You have a 6-segment video course on sacred geometry. So a huge, steep discount to that, $100 off. So we'll put the link. The link's a bit long. I won't say it here, but we'll put the link in the show notes and everywhere that this podcast will be posted. So everyone, please check that out. It's a very generous offer there. In the last minute or so that we have here, any last words of wisdom or golden nuggets that you guys would like to share for the audience?
Well, when Gregory was just talking about where we live, I would say, most people don't have the opportunity to live where we live, and get out in nature, go out for a walk, listen to the birds, just do something that helps you come back into resonance. And truly, I think meditation is a great way to de-stress, start the morning, and get on target.
Yeah, I love what you guys said, and it's everything I practice myself, and I also, encourage all my clients to do as well. So, yeah, we're gonna have all your guys' links in the show notes so people can find you. I'm gonna throw it back to Jxxiii to guide us out with the music. Thanks for listening to the Deepak Saini Show. Exceptional results for the exceptional you. Gail and Gregory, thank you very much for being on the show. I really appreciate your time today.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Deepak.
Thank you.
Podcast produced by the